Time for scary things to be created. This tutorial requires intermediate skills, takes 3 to 4 hours to prep, and about 1.5 to 2 hours to apply. If you're doing special effects on a regular basis, the only thing you need to spend a tiny amount of money on is that little fabric for the top as well as some Ellimorph Plastic. Speaking of fabric, there it is, and now we are gonna apply that to this old rag. And of course, what we want to achieve is a leathery look, just like that from our reference shot. Alright, so we begin to mark out where we want this fabric to go. Alright, so let's try to fit this all in. Now we begin to cut down into a nice width. Then we are creating that leaning, sloping bottom line. And as you will see, we are not drawing out stuff on the fabric here. This is totally winging it. Usually that's the way we go about stuff. If you want to be super neat, you can of course make sure you draw lines there and cut precisely. Alright, so let's make an incision in the middle there. Flip the thing over and start carving out for the cups. There we have the two edges that are going on the outside of the cups, and then it's just basically going from the middle and around and match that up. Like that. Unfortunately, since we are winging it, stuff didn't quite fit like expected, so we had to put an extra little piece of fabric in place there. I'm gonna show you right away. So let's glue it on. This is basic hobby glue. Make sure you get it all over the place there. And simply attach the piece we just prepared. And for that extra gap there under the right cup, we add a little extra piece. Just put it in place. And now comes the cool part. To turn this soft, nice fabric into a leathery texture, we apply glue on top of it as well. Really push down that glue into the fabric. And it actually turns out to, feel a little bit like leather. Just get it in there in the fibers properly. Then we need one additional piece there for the upper part of the cup. A very simple piece of fabric. Glue it on there. Right there. And again, give it that little treatment with the glue to get the leathery feel of it. And when we are done, we leave this top to dry. We left ours overnight. Then it's time to create the metal rings for the harness that goes on our chest. We pour the Ellimorph pellets in hot water, scoop them up when they are soft, and roll them out. We are gonna create 3 large rings. Roll the Ellimorph out, just like that. Make 2 little incisions there, split it in 3 equal parts, cut them up with a pair of scissors, and if the plastic is too hard to fuse together, simply dip it in hot water and it becomes soft again. And you can easily bend it around and create a circle. Work it with your fingertips to push it together at the end there. Perfect. And when you've got one, well, make 2 more. There you go. We'll leave those 3 rings to cool off and harden, and then we continue with teeth since we have our Ellimorph on the table. Simply pick up a tiny piece, shape it like a tooth, and do a bunch of them. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. The rings have set and hardened, so we paint them. We are using a black spray paint here. You can of course use a silver spray paint if you got one. The rings for our harness are ready. Now we need some more leather straps. So again, back to the fabric, cut out 2 strips like this. And of course you have to measure out how long they have to be to fit your body. We wrap that fabric around our fake metal rings and attach it with a little bit of glue on the other side there. And boom, your leather strap is ready. And of course we give those straps the same glue treatment as before to get that leathery texture. And since we're gonna need more fake leather pieces, we might as well treat a few extra there so that we can construct the harness later. While those strap pieces are drying, we are mixing together some latex paste. That is liquid latex with flour. We add a little bit of flour at a time to make sure it's not too lumpy. Then we apply this to a face cast because we are going to create the first part of our prosthetics, and that is the mouthpiece with the teeth. This will later become two separate pieces, and we don't want too much of that latex paste up there on the lip, but we do want enough so that we can sink in the teeth we created earlier. The mouthpieces will actually go behind the main mask that we are creating later. Use a spatula or a knife with some latex on to really make sure you split that mouth open. Makes it a lot easier later when we are splitting it. Insert teeth in the order and manner you want, and then simply leave to dry overnight. And before we continue to connect a few of those harness pieces, why don't we go to England and SFX Makeup by Amy. Go check this amazing account out. She's 13 years old and creates a lot of amazing stuff, so go check it out, give her some love. Back to those leather pieces, and now they are dry and good to be used. And it's the same principle as before. 3 straps on each. Flap that piece over and glue it. And boom, you're ready. And instead of punching a hole and putting a real button there, we simply add a dash of that hot glue. There you go, a fake button. Now let's bring out some hard paper and create those fake blades for the head. Each wedge-shaped blade is made up of 2 equal curved paper pieces and 1 small thin strip. Let's put them together. Cut out 1 small and 1 large piece and measure them up and cut them until they fit your head. Then use those pieces as templates. To put the whole thing together, you also need a thin strip for each of the blades. That thin strip should be the length of that inner curve of each of those paper pieces. So apply glue, attach that thin piece, make sure it's standing up. Like that. You can always trim the paper later, so don't think too much about it. Then we need to do a wedge shape on one end. There you go. Then we apply glue along that thin strip as well. And smack on that second piece. Make sure the glue is dry. Of course, add glue on the sharp edge there as well. And just like that, you have created a wedge-shaped fake blade with a nice thick inner edge that we're going to use as a surface when we attach it to our head. You can always go in and trim those blades so that they look neat. Yep, and remember to make 4 of them in 2 different sizes. 1 size for the side of your head, like that, and another one for the top. Now it's time for the crazy project of the main mask prosthetic, and for that we're going to use some clay first to make sure the prosthetic protrudes enough from our eyes so that we don't get annoyed when we blink behind it later. Same goes for our nose, because we want to be able to breathe, so we need some extra space there. And then, as so many times before, we mix liquid latex with baking flour to create that latex paste. And I know a lot of you have issues getting the right consistency, but just add a little bit of flour at a time and keep mixing and stirring it well. If it's too thin, just add a little more flour. Just don't add too much in one go. We smear it out on that face cast, and if you don't have a face cast, use anything face shaped. Just make sure you align the eyes to your actual eyes, as well as your mouth to your actual mouth, as good as it goes. This mask is, it's nasty because it's going to be pretty smooth, so you have to work it a lot with liquid latex on your fingertips to smooth out that surface. Make sure you carve out a big enough hole there, because that's where our mouth and teeth prosthetic is gonna come out. For the eyes, we begin with a nice smooth surface and then go in with a spatula or a knife, if you will, dipped in latex and create those deep streaks and cross marks there around the eyes. And at this stage, we also need to think ahead about those metal blades we created, because they're gonna run into the forehead there, so we need to create little lanes for them. Then leave this to dry overnight and head on, because now we're gonna create chains. And to create all those links in the chain, we of course turn to our favorite product, Ellimorph Plastic again. And it's basically the same process as with the rings, but it's a little bit more tricky this time. We need a long, thin roll, very thin. Cut out pieces, loop them around, maybe heat them if you need to, just like that. Put it together. Yay, the first link of your chain. And as you might have guessed, the rest is not rocket science. Simply, take that piece of plastic, loop it through the first link, and then just push those ends together. And again, if the plastic is too rigid to work, simply dip it in hot water for a while. It will turn soft and you can fuse those edges together with your fingertips. We need 2 long chains and 1 short for the harness, and we also need 2 chains to go around the neck. How long exactly and how many links you'll need to create it, that's up to you and how big you are or how small you want to make the links. So it's pretty much up to you how big or small you want the chains and the links and so on. So you can also use real chains, of course. We didn't have any real chains, so we thought it was kind of cool to try to create them with Ellimorph Plastic. And that went well. When they are painted with black or silver paint, it's time to glue on more straps there to complete this harness. And of course, we repeat the process from before, wrapping those pieces of fabric around the chains. Next up, 3 additional links to link this whole harness together with that center ring. This is tricky with super long nails, but yeah, same process as before. Wrap that around, heat it up if you need to fuse it together, or simply use glue if it's too tricky. And when done, we go over it again with some spray paint. And speaking of spray paint, let's create metal out of these paper blades. But first, let's make them jagged, look more rough that way. Simply cut them up a bit, like that. And again, using that black hairspray paint to give it that worn down metal look. And to really trash these metal blades even further, we go in with an orange tone here to give it a rusty look. And combining this black tone with the already gray paper along with that orange, it actually looks like rusty metal when we're done. Really, really cool. Just look at that. What do you say we check back on our prosthetics? And there they are, the full mask along with that mouthpiece. Now let's peel them off. And as usual with latex prosthetics, you need to cover them in powder or flour when you peel them off, and make sure you apply that to the inner side as well. Otherwise the latex will stick to itself and you'll ruin it. With our prosthetics off, we trim them a little bit, cutting off that excess latex and the flappy edges, leaving a little because we might want it for later. We also clean up the mouth there and head on with the eyes. We need holes to be able to see out through this mask as well, so cut those out too. After that, it's painting time, and we need to emphasize those cracks around the eyes there with a deep purple tone. And with that in place, we go over it with our favorite foundation to match it up to our skin tone. Using that same deep purple tone, we outline the mouth as well. And using a sponge, we spread that color outwards from the mouth, mixing it in there with a little foundation. Then we set the colors using a clear varnish. The cool thing about this is that not only does it set the color, it also brings it out and gives it more pop, along with that sort of creepy shine. It's basically the same process for the teeth prosthetics. Trim them, go in with a deep red base tone, because all this is just gum. For additional realism, we go in with a much darker red tone close to the teeth there and add it in streaks going upwards. So right there in between each tooth, we go in streaks upwards to get that shading of the gum. Looks really, really nasty. We also mix in a little bit of that brighter tone so that we get both highlights and shades in that gum. And before we finish this prosthetic off with varnish as well, we go in with a yellowish brown tone there on the teeth, making them look dirty, nasty, and really worn down. Are you in the mood for more movie-related Halloween looks? Check out our Movies and Televisions playlist for lots of recognizable characters from your favorite TV shows and movies. We need to create 2 fleshy open wounds on the chest, so let's outline those to begin with, and then continue with foundation. To create the edges of the wounds, we mix up a fresh batch of latex paste and smear it on along the edge. We fade that from the edge of the wound and outwards. We want that to look like skin poking up a little bit there on the inside of the wound. Yeah, smooth it out with a spatula or your finger. Speed dry it with a blow dryer. You'll see how hot that is, since Ellie's skin got really red after that speed drying process. Then we are going over this with powder to really set it, and then it's painting time. This paint job is going to create muscle fibers, so we are going in with a deep red tone here in streaks, just like this. And with that red base, we go in with foundation on a thinner brush to create the muscle fibers. With the fibers in place, we cover up the wound edges with our foundation. And while we're at it, we go in with a slightly darker tone there for some shading. To make this skin look less polished and pretty, we go in with a spray paint in the color brown. You can of course use a water-based color and flick it on using a brush for the same effect. And remember that hole in the top, that's supposed to be skin, so we go in with foundation there as well. Then it's strap attachment time, and we are using liquid latex to attach this to our body, straight into the wound there. If your skin feels better with skin adhesive like Spirit Gum or something like that, go ahead and use that instead. Same process with the harness that we of course also attach on the cups there further down. Then it's chain time, and since this chain is really short, we actually went and used a wire for the back side there. That way we don't have to use a super long chain. And if you're wondering who Ellie is talking to right here, it's you, our fans, because this is done during a Twitch session, so some of you might have seen this creation live. More dirt on the skin. Time to get down to business with that face mask, but first of course protect that hairline with some Vaseline or any kind of oil like olive oil if you got. Then put on that ball cap. Halfway on if that's your thing. Nope, leave it on. That face. Yeah, and we attach it of course with liquid latex here. Skin adhesive is equally fine to use. And not surprisingly, we go over the whole thing with our foundation. And Ellie is using a two-part foundation to get it right to her skin. With a dirty body, we need an equally dirty head. So along with that brown spray paint we go. Next up, time to split that mouthpiece in two and apply. Just make sure it fits well there. Might want to round it off for their nose. Then again, back to our trusty liquid latex and attach the pieces. I'm gluing half a mouth in my face. In Swedish is jag klistrar en halv mun i mitt ansikte. With that in place, we touch up some of the edges there with that same color we used on the prosthetic. We need some dark tones on our eyelids as well, or it's gonna look freaky when we blink through the holes in our little mask. Then it's main prosthetic time, attaching with latex. We need a rich and ample amount of latex there, both in the mask and on our face. We want this to stick there for the duration, so apply it, push down all those edges, make sure it really sits there, and as usual with masks like this, we line it with additional latex to really secure it and to match it up with that skin texture around it. That blow dryer, speed drying latex for the win. Then again, heading back to that foundation, fading the mask into our head. Little brown hairspray paint there helps, even if we don't have any hair. And pay attention here, when Ellie shakes her head, doesn't she look like C-3PO? I think she does. I want to see that again. Yup, definitely. Alright, let's get back to business and attach these nasty metal blades. Of course, using liquid latex on that thick side of it. Push it on there, and the best thing to do here is actually to speed dry it while you hold it, because otherwise it might not stick as intended. The blades on the side can be a bit tricky, but they actually stuck there much better than we expected thanks to that thick line on that blade. Heading on to blood, and we need a little here, a little there, mainly along the wound, of course. We also go in and line those metal blades, of course. Nasty. Some final little black spray there on the neck. Guess what? We are crossing the finish line. We have created the Missionary from Silent Hill. And we think this came out really, really awesome. It's a bit of a project if you want to do everything by yourself, especially the chains and stuff, but it's awesome what you can do with very, very little money involved. If you just put your mind to it and have that extra time, we think this is gonna be an awesome Halloween outfit. No doubt about it. We'll soon be back with a nightmare. Bye.